and welcome to another edition of Trader Talk TV. Today we have Mathieu, Roche from Weborama in the office.
Morning.
How you doing?
Very well. How are you?
And today we're going to talk about the findings of a report we did in conjunction with Weborama about use cases and usage of DMP technology across Europe. And Matthew's kindly come into the office to talk a little bit about that and go into the detail of the report as well. So Matthew, we spoke obviously in Paris around this, but today we want to sort of get into the weeds around some of the findings of this report and talk about DMPs in specific terms. So let's talk about some of the stats from the actual report, right? So we found that 68% of European media buyers now use DMP. Why do you think the adoption has been so high for this particular piece of technology?
Well, I think first I think it's a very interesting number. It's very much aligned with what we see in the US. So there's no difference between the markets, and it shows that media buyers, media sellers, brands, marketers, networks, etc., have really taken into consideration the importance of data in their operation. There is a lot of there's probably a lot of things behind this number, right? People talk about DMP and mean different things when they talk about DMP. When you look at the detail, the numbers in details, some people have an advanced usage of web analytics data and consider this to be a DMP application. Others have a real, complete centralization of all of the digital data points and use that to optimize media buying, content operations, etc. So it covers a lot of things, but at least it shows that the term DMP and the application of data for marketing and advertising are now, widespread, let's say, in the industry. And I think that's a very positive number, especially coming from where we come from. But then again, there are different ways to use data and different understanding behind that number. So I don't think we should consider that the market is done and dusted.
No.
It still is very much work in progress.
And it seems like a very high number. Like, are we seeing a degree of sophistication now among sort of DMP users in Europe? I mean, it's first of all, it's a pretty big investment for a piece of technology. So I'm just thinking that, are we seeing more?
Again, I think there are people consider DMPs to be different things. Right. So we're not necessarily talking about the 300k or 500k yearly investment necessarily for all of those 68%. Some of them will look at more simple applications of data to optimize media and marketing actions really and say, we have a DMP because we're doing this. But yes, it is. I think it's really more the consideration that data is important and that data matters to be able to better engage with your clients and your prospects that this number reflects.
And the other third then that's not using the DMP, what do you think the challenges are for them kind of uptaking the technology? Is it sort of early days for the market to be taking this technology on board, or is there a reason why there's a third not using them?
I think it's important for everyone, and even the ones who have not implemented DMP solutions still say that data is important. I think the fact that most DMP applications, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but most DMP applications are advertising related. Kind of rules out a number of players who are not necessarily very much ad driven, right? Then there is a kind of a political dimension to it. DMP can kind of be addressed by the IT department, the marketing department, the branding department, the communications department.
So kind of like
who's going to take it up?
Where does this technology sit?
Exactly. Where do we start? And sometimes an organization can take a lot of time to kind of have a blueprint of this data landscape and where we should start to invest in technology solution to kind of organize this. I think some people are just not convinced yet about what they hear and it's been a buzzword for a number of years now, DMP, and there's a lot of positive and negative comments about them. Whether they are true or not is not the problem, but it creates a lot of confusion. There's a real need for people to think about what they want to do with it. It's not a DMP is not the solution, right? It's an answer to a need. If you have not qualified your needs, if you have not identified what your data strategy should be, you don't need a DMP, right? You should start with a strategy, and a lot of organizations are still in this data strategy phase. So I think that's the reason why we are only at 68%, even though we can consider 68% still a very high number. But it's not been there. It's not been like adopted by everyone for that very reason. But when you look at the plans and you add up the percentage of companies who have a DMP now and the percentage of companies who are expecting to have one within the next, I think it's 12 or 18 months, you're up to 90% already.
Yeah.
So it's on the radar for almost everyone. Some organizations have been quicker than implemented than others.
So the other key thing that came out of the report was calculating ROI, right? Because obviously, again, it's a big investment as regards to financial commitment and resource, as you said.
Yep.
But like when you talk about ROI, how does your clients, explain that or define it?
Yeah. Well, so what we see in the report is that a lot of respondents say we don't really know how to calculate ROI.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they say we are very satisfied with what we do with with DMP, right? So I think it kind of illustrates the complexity of the system because it impacts so many areas in an organization, so many ways of doing business. Some things are very easy to measure, right? Like, well, I'm able to retarget my visitors, and I know that I have a better conversion rate when I retarget them when I don't, right? So that's easy to measure, but it's only one application of your data management platform. How do you measure the impact of your marketing and your advertising department working better together, right? How do you measure the impact of on your brand of having a better way to address emails, right? Or better content in your emails. It's not only opening rate, it's not only click-through rate, there's a lot more things to it. And I think that complexity makes it difficult to measure a true ROI because you know that it impacts a lot of areas in your organization.
So do you think the fact that it straddles many different worlds, like, so you talk about marketing, talk about IT, talk about advertising, right? That it's almost difficult at the minute to kind of calculate the ROI, right? It's because it's just, we use it for this, we use it for that, and it's kind of
Well, what we see with our clients is that they come to us with a very broad data strategy, right? Like overarching idea of what they want to do with data, and then they have 3 to 5 use cases.
Yeah.
And they say this is where we want to go.
Yeah.
And the first 6 months we want to do this. And we're going to base our evaluation on those use cases. It's a very limited application of what we could do, but it's a start. And if we consider that this is positive from an ROI standpoint, right, then we'll roll it out across the board. The rest we don't really know how to measure. So we're gonna measure partial benefits of the DMP.
Yeah.
Click-through rate, conversion rate, cost per acquisition, things that you can actually quantify, right? That can be improved. You do A/B testing to understand how users who have been qualified by the DMP are responding versus those who have not been qualified by the DMP, etc., etc. So you measure that, and then there's a leap of faith to do to go the extra mile to say, well, that's good enough for me to kind of cover 80%, 70%, 90% of the investment. I trust that the soft benefits of that tool will make me go above the 100% and kind of monetize the rest of my investment in a way.
Is in the report itself, it seems to be that adoption is lower among big brands, right, at the minute. Do you so for me, like the DMP has so much potential in terms of being like maybe potentially being the cockpit of the entire operation, right? Being able to do things, not just segmentation for the likes of retargeting, which is a very simple use case, but actually being able to optimize the entire journey of the user across websites, email, etc. And do you think at the minute that we're still sort of in this evolution phase where big brands are saying, right, I know this is a key piece of technology, but I want this to be much more than just, a retargeting segmentation tool.
I think it shows that when you look at the report, brands have a lower level of adoption,
right,
versus the media professionals, the publishers, the agencies, the trading desks, right? Because they live and breathe by advertising. And advertising is the obvious first step of application for the DMP.
Fast adopters will be that segment.
Exactly. It's what it's been built for originally, right? And programmatic has been the main channel for DMP activation because the pipes are plugged already, right? You create a segment, whether it's a prospect segment or a visitors or client segment or whatever, and you use it to exclude from your acquisition campaign or to target your acquisition campaign or whatever. It's all very well packaged already. Yeah. Right? So obviously, media applications come first. So media-driven organization are first to kind of jump on board of this. Brands, they look at it from a very different angle. Some of them are not big advertisers,
No.
right? Some of them, I mean, you look at telcos, you look at utility. It's mostly about how do I retain my client, how do I provide a better customer experience to my clients, right? Lookalike modeling and acquisition, I don't really care, right?
Yeah.
So for these
So
guys,
how would a big that's interesting. 'Cause how would you see a big telco using it? Like, what would be the sort of the key areas beyond that, activation acquisition piece?
What we see is that there are really two types of projects, and telco might not be the best example of industry, but there are two types of projects. Some are very much media driven, acquisition driven, right? And they usually come from the media department, from the communications department of the brand, or from the agency directly. And they're like, we want to optimize our acquisition strategy using data to exclude our clients, to identify high potential prospects, to run creative engagement scenarios, right? All around that all areas that they control. That's the first type of project. The second type of project is from the marketing department, and it's around client data, customer data, right? We want to enrich our understanding of our own customers by bringing in digital data points. We want to improve the way we engage with our customers, right, by being able to using our customer data in a media environment. But it starts from customer data and usually comes from the marketing department. So those are two very different types of projects, and the use case they'll come up with will be very different. And I think it kind of paints different pictures, and very often we see marketers being on this side, on the marketing side, on the customer engagement side, on how do I improve my understanding of my own customers, especially in verticals such as insurance and utility, and where they have very, very rich customer information, and they just want to make more out of it. While industries where it's more about acquisition will be more on a media-driven type of application, a media-driven type of data DMP usage. And they will focus more on how do I better buy media, how do I better target creatives, how do I better
This is very
identify.
simple. It's a very simple thing, that acquisition piece, but the potential.
I wouldn't say it's
Well,
simple.
it's not simple, but
I'd
like,
say it's packaged in a better fashion, right? Because it's activation
It's
through
more
programmatic.
obvious,
It's more obvious,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
because it's activation through programmatic, and DSPs, they are built to use data to optimize media buying, right? At servers, they can use data to optimize creatives. So it's more natively set up in a way, right?
Well,
Marketing scenarios. Connecting, there's a lot of privacy related issues, right? Connecting behavioral data with customer data, there's a lot of challenges around this. And then the activation tools, which will be your CMS or your product recommendation engine or those or your emailing systems, they are not natively plugged.
Not yet.
Not as well as DSPs or SSPs.
Well, that's what we want to get. Is the ability to sort of like go, here's an API, WordPress plugs into the DMP. Here's the email.
Absolutely, and that's where we're going. And and again, with some of our clients, these are the number one use cases that we're doing. Right? Again, insurance clients, it's all about reducing churn. So how do I identify? How do I use digital data points to identify clients that are at risk? Right, because they're searching for a new car, and I know that if I have a car insurance contract with them, when they change car is the single moment where they are most at risk for me. So how do I identify those behaviors and use that to enrich my understanding my customer, so that in the end the agent can pick up the phone and give them a call and say, hey mate, we've got a new promotion on the car insurance and things like that. So it's totally separate from the traditional pre-plugged universe of programmatic advertising. And that's what makes it more difficult, because then everybody has its own call center system, everybody has its own CMS system, everybody has its own emailing system.
And there's a lot of bits and pieces
and
there.
There's a lot of bits and pieces.
But the brands, you say, want to take a more holistic point of view of this. They're going, right, we want to look at the entire picture just instead of one particular piece.
And that, back to your question, that's why it's taking longer for them to kind of get on board, because they need to go first through the data strategy exercise, which is, the DMP is not going to solve your data strategy, right? You need to come up with your own goals. Why do you want to use data? How do you want to use data to better engage with your clients and your prospects? And then the DMP will be the response to that, right? But it's not like you can't say, let's just plug a DMP and it'll make data work for us. It's not the way it goes.
It's an investment which they have to justify, I guess. So I mean, is that how you work with your clients? That you sit down with them first and say, right, we need to kind of do a full assessment of what your goals are, or do they come to you?
Usually we come once they've started to do this. That's when we come in. We can usually that's the work that they do with consultants, that the work that they do with media agencies.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the first
steps.
layer exactly and the conclusion of that step is we need a DMP to kind of solve those questions that we have and to implement the data-driven use cases that we've identified. And that's when they come to us. And then there's a big work that we do with them, which is, okay, how do we translate this data strategy into technical specification, right? What type of data do we have to collect? How do we want to pre-organize it? How do we want to make it available? Into what systems? And that's our take, that's our contribution to the data strategy. It's like the translation of the data strategy into a DMP implementation strategy.
Yeah.
And then we go to work and we run in.
It sounds like it's not a media focused. It's more of an enterprise style type approach in the sense that you come in with your clients and there's a license fee or something like that, and you work with them in hand to build out a strategy and evolve the product as you go along.
Yeah, I think so.
Specifics.
Yeah, I agree. It's very different from coming from a media background, because originally the easiest way and the only way to use data that we had for our clients was to make it work to optimize their campaigns. So that's where we come from, and we've really discovered an entirely new area, which is, well, data has actually a lot more to do with my customer relationship, the way I measure risk, the way I measure opportunities, right, than just media buying.
Yeah.
Media buying becomes not a side topic, but it becomes one of the topics that we have to address.
Yeah.
So it takes us closer to the client, and takes us closer to the IT department, takes us closer to the whole marketing strategy of the client, rather than just its communication, activation strategy.
So in the report as well, one of the interesting data points was no one size fits all. There is this common perception: you get a DMP in a box, you plug it in, away you go, but that's not the case. Exactly. I mean, how do you see that particular data point? What could you?
It doesn't mean that it has to be complicated, but it's exactly what I was saying about the fact that every client will come to this topic with its own angle.
Yeah.
Right. Look at an example. One of our biggest client is an insurance company, and they probably have, I don't know, maybe less than 10% of their clients logging into their apps and their websites every month. I don't know how often you go to your insurance website and log in, but
every day.
Okay, so you're 10%. So for them, identifying clients is a real issue.
Yeah.
And we will have a lot of applications of our technology to be able to identify their clients in this unidentified environment, right? Another one of our big client is an e-commerce website. 80+% of their clients log into their website every month.
Yeah.
Right? So their identification problem is not a problem. They identify everyone every time, right? So those are two very different ways to address this customer identification issue, depending on where you sit, where you sit, and what your ecosystem looks like. Then again, what are your key use cases, right? What we try to do every time I meet with a client or a prospect is, what are your 3 to 5 key use cases, right? How do you want to use data? What should we do for you in the next 6 months in terms of data applications? And depending on what those key use cases are, and they are always different, it will give you a different way to do it. So I think, yes, it's not a one size fits all in the sense that priorities will be different. Eventually, hopefully, everybody will have a centralized way to identify clients and prospects, and scoring mechanisms or segmentation mechanisms, and then distribution of those segments into all of the touch points that they have with their clients and prospects, right? That's the end game. But to go there, you need to take priorities. Yeah. And the priorities will differ if you are if you have a lot of clients that you can identify online or not, if you are a big media spender or not, if you have a lot of data on your own clients or not, if you are in a short sales cycle or long sales cycle industry. Every case will be different, and that's what the one size fits all approach is undoable. It doesn't work like that. It's not a system on the box that you take and that you implement and it works, right? Some of the use cases are easy. Some of the use cases are always the same. Yeah. But by and large, it will be a very different setup every time. Yeah. And that's why service is very important.
Yeah. There's another data point which was quite interesting. DMP is still not providing enough data insights. obviously connecting up the different parts of the sort of MarTech and AdTech ecosystems. How do we change that? How can we make that work?
Well, it shows that people want to do more with data, right? The kind of the low hanging fruit of, I'm plugging my data into my media activation system. That's all done, and then I need to know more. I need to be able to use data to improve the way I score my clients for risks or for potential, for upselling potential and things like this. And this means that I need to have more ways to slice and dice and to understand how my data can give me insights, whether it's in my marketing strategy or even potentially my product strategy, right? And the way we've, and there are plenty of developments that we're doing around data visualization, around analytics, right? Being able to overlay third party to first party to kind of inform clients on the structure of their first party segments and things like this. But I think at some point we will reach a limit, and some of the clients that we're working with have asked us to actually feed separate data lakes where they have a much more granular approach to data, and they are able to kind of work on it offline in a way, right? And to identify patterns and to work on data to get insights, then feed them back into the DMP, because I think that the core functionality of the DMP is really to unify all of your data points, coming in, and then to make segments, right? To group users who have similar characteristics and that can be engaged in a similar fashion, and then distribute that data as broadly as possible. That's really the core competence of the DMP. So being able to do that means that you want to be able to externalize the data to potentially data lakes or data insight systems that will provide you this extra layer of.
So what we're saying to say is, the DMP is a blank canvas in many ways. There's so many possibilities that we can work with.
There are some pretty advanced and pretty standardized use cases, right? That can kind of the low hanging fruit I was talking about that can be interesting for a lot of clients. But by far it is very much work in progress in many areas. And that's what makes it interesting, because that's what enables clients to find an edge, and to have that competitive advantage over their competitors, by having this intelligent way of using data.
Mathieu, thanks for coming in today, and thanks for that insight and a great report this year as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Trader Talk TV.
Thank you.